Right, so slight change in the presentation. Kevin from Emtelle unfortunately couldn't make it. He's been held up in the business. So fortunately, we've got Chris. So Chris was involved in the project from the start, but as a contractor working on the Emtelle project. So I'll just introduce Chris, and he'll explain his role and what Emtelle did as a business, and then how we got engaged with them.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just dead relaxed, just open conversation. We've not prepared anything other than a slide of what it used to look like and what it looks like now in the business on these devices.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Chris Hendry. I'm a bit of a veteran of SAP and ERP implementations. I've been doing them now since the late 90s. So I've done R2, I've done R3, I've done ECC, I've done S4, I've done S4 HANA, I've done public cloud, I've done private cloud. And of course, SAP tends to be the kind of backbone, as any ERP solution would be, but we've also integrated into a number of legacy systems that the businesses required. I worked in a whole variety of different industries, typically automotive, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, logistics, etc., etc. So about 3.5 years ago, I was asked if I would go and assist a company called Emtelle, who's Nigel advised up front, are a manufacturer of ducting and blown fibre for telecommunications companies like BT, Deutsche Telekom, Virgin Media, etc. So they had just selected SAP. They were in the throes of signing contracts for the actual licenses, plus the cost of the integration that was required. So when I kind of went in and took a look initially at those two elements, it was quite obvious that the costs were kind of way over what they should have been. So that was my first step into Emtelle. We've got things sorted out. We've got major reductions for licensing and for implementation. And we then had to look at implementing SAP into 5 different sites, 1 in Denmark, 1 in Germany, 2 in the UK, and 1 out in Ireland. In the sites, 1 of them worked off spreadsheets. 1 of them had a really old version of AX, and another one used C5. So effectively, we had to implement the whole solution for all those sites. We started with a kind of template rollout. So the scope of the actual rollout was finance, controlling, purchasing, production planning. We had QM, we had warehousing, we had logistics, and of course EWM and IM we also implemented. So we also...
Just to touch on that, so people don't know the 3-letter acronyms. So EWM, Extended Warehouse Management, IM, Inventory Management. So different modules within the SAP landscape. Sorry, Chris.
Okay, no, that's
it, yeah.
I'm actually quite happy.
We do it all the time, and people say to us, sorry, what does that mean?
It's fine to kind of jump in and ask any questions at any time. It's really just meant to be a very kind
Yeah, it is, yeah, loose.
So also within Emtelle, they had no process documents in any of the sites at all. So every site who made the same product, they had 19,000 different products. They had over 12,000 bombs. They had 2,500 different suppliers, and they had 5,000 different customers. No processes anywhere. So we had to really kind of implement all the process documentation. And make the processes the same across all sites, which I think is a real biggie if you're going to implement any new system, whether it's ERP or RFID or whatever. If you've got more than one site, you ideally want to synchronize your processes. So a lot of people, when they think of an IT implementation, think it's the technical side of things that are more likely to give you the biggest headaches. Really kind of not necessarily the case. I think it's having the business ready for the change that can be the most difficult piece. There's a whole host of other elements that are key if you're kind of implementing any new solution. So over and above the technical side of things, how good is your data? If the data's kind of rough and ready, then that can take a massive amount of work to polish it up and transform it and get it loaded into the solution that you're implementing. We didn't probably really understand how big some of the challenges were. So, for example, implement barcoding just rolls off your tongue, nice and easily. And although a number of folks have got really detailed experience of a particular area, like me with ERP, had no real knowledge at all of implementing barcoding. And by the way, it was not used at all within Emtelle, so it was like a blank piece of paper. So I kind of figured I should have a look about, did the usual, went onto the internet. What kind of scanner should we use? Oh, Zebra looks like perhaps good ones to use. And then we were kind of
introduced to us by Zebra, yeah. So Nigel and I did a site visit and came and met Chris and the wider team. So I think it was about 18 people in the meeting that day. We had a really good chat, had a look at what you were doing, what you were looking at implementing, walked around the site, and ahead of going into UAT, you'd started barcoding your products, and Nigel spotted that there was some print challenges really. So they were using the wrong type of media mix. A lot of the products stored outside, so they were printing wax onto polyprop labels, onto plastic, and it just smudged straight away. So a lot of the barcode labels were unreadable, which actually fell into the fact that it was a procurement issue, not actually an operations issue. They weren't aware that this was going on. So we sorted that out and then identified the right type of hardware, talked about comms. A lot of the products stored outside, there wasn't any Wi-Fi or private 5G or even standard 4G, 3G phone connectivity. And it went from there really. So we sort of identified that there would be a challenge around getting connectivity with the solution that you're implementing, which was the one on the left-hand side, ITS, which is a browser-based solution. And if you're storing your products outside and using handheld equipment that needs to connect to a network, bit of a challenge. Yeah. But you sort of got there in the end, and then you went into UAT in Germany and Denmark, and you can't see too well, but the screens were built really badly, and things like error messages were running off, so you couldn't actually see what was happening. So you contacted us and said, look, we've got this issue, what do we do? And we said, well, we had a conversation when we first met you about a mobile client, and really what you need to do is look at a completely new mobile client. We then went down the route of making introductions to partners and gave you some options as a business. You're not just going to go with anything. You need to evaluate what's on the market and what works best for you, what partner's best for you. We did site visits at Exertis, local to here, with one partner, and with JLR at another. And then the team at Emtelle ultimately ended up with the Rocket mobile solution, which you see on the right-hand side. So nothing changed in the back end. It was on the actual handheld side, making the screens look pretty, making them user-friendly. So things like onboarding, the guys in Germany and Denmark spent a lot of time, days in training and onboarding, whereas the system that you see on the right side, the solution on the right hand side, simple, user intuitive, training cuts down to a matter of hours as opposed to days. So a lot of the traditional mobile client software that you see, historic stuff, it's really, really bad to look at. It's, it's not designed well. It's designed to run on old systems, and not designed in all touch. It's designed for the traditional style devices that you see with physical keys. So a lot of the newer mobile client software available, and across multiple different ERP systems, we have options and partners, have been made so that they're simple, they're easy to use, they then link back into features and functionality that you have on the newer equipment, such as cameras for taking photographs, videos and things like that as well. So if you're receiving a damaged pallet, you can video it, you can communicate with line managers and see what call of action you need to do in terms of QA, etc. So that was a relatively quick process, Chris, wasn't it?
It was, but I think the kind of big learning for Emtelle and for me too was that we were working with experts in some areas. So we're working with IBM and EY as the integrators, and we also had a number of people like me that had been around SAP for a while, but we didn't have anyone who really understood what it takes to implement a backcoding solution properly. So we kind of lucked out a bit, and I do mean this in connecting with the guys who knew the subject matter inside out, who could get things done so quickly and easily, who could connect us with other potential suppliers for skins, etc., who could help and advise on the training of people. We had over, for example, in Denmark, we had over 90 operators using scanners for the first time. That's a recipe for disaster if it's not managed properly. We had about 70 operators in Germany, and there's over 300 in the Scottish plants.
Yeah. I think the original, the pushback was that it was so complicated and not intuitive that the guys in Germany and Denmark ultimately pushed back and said, well, we'd rather just use bits of paper. And we see it time and time again in lots of businesses where this happens. That user interface has got to be so clean and easy that if it isn't, people just don't want to use it. It's just easier to write things down on a bit of paper and go back to a PC. And the whole cost of delivering this project's been a complete waste of time. So that ultimately happened, and I think you gave us a call in November, and I think end to end from initial remote presentations to site visits to actually down selecting the partner and signing contracts and installing and going live was less than 5 months, which I'm sure there's a lot of you guys here in the SAP ecosystem. That is quick. To be able to physically implement something into the warehouse on handheld in a matter of months from a standing start is really good. So we're hoping that now they've gone live, that everything will move swimmingly and the guys will be able to transact properly. And when we were talking about data before, it's so key getting that data right and getting it into the system at the right time. Otherwise, again, you end up with all sorts of issues. But yeah, I think that's about it, really.
Chris, quick question, because you're in an interesting position there. You've already tried to implement the technology on the shop floor once, and there's been a big pushback. How do you manage, or what's the process, or what's the engagement to revisit that? Because I'm guessing barriers were up. What was the idea from the business to say, look, we want to try something new, and how did you get over that resistance, if there was any or not, or I don't know?
Well, kind of going back to the start, there was no method of controlling product at all. So everyone, when we started explaining that we wanted to use coding were really quite up for it. They really just didn't understand what they were getting into, and to be honest, neither did people like me. So we discovered really quite quickly that you had to go into the processes in detail. You had to make sure people were really trained up every step in the process along the whole way. They were used to being very indisciplined. Remember I mentioned 10 minutes ago that there were no process documentation at all in any of the factories. So they were kind of doing, to a degree, almost whatever they wanted. So there was a huge focus on this is the as-is, this is a to-be, here's the documentation, the quick reference guides, the process documentation you need. We actually had people out in the lines and in the warehouse, and in the logistics areas, checking and giving feedback. We ran surgeries where the operators could come in, with an issue or a problem, tell us what it was and ask us for the solution. So that was kind of how we did that.
But in terms of, I guess that was, like I said, it came from a place where there was no process, no standardised process. That was about essentially creating one, or? Yeah,
we put processes in place everywhere. So effectively, training the end users, I'm sure as you all know, is really kind of pretty important.
And challenging.
Extremely. Well, when you consider that an awful lot of the people don't speak English as their first language, some people had been around for a while, so some of them actually thought a mouse was an actual squeaky mouse. So there was a kind of huge amount of time and effort put into that, documenting the processes, creating the quick reference guides. What we found, and I'm sure it's the same for you, certain types of people really only want to know, how do I do my job? I don't care about all this other stuff, just tell me how I do my job. So it was essential that we had quick reference guides for everyone, that kind of laminated in your back pocket type of thing, so they could actually follow the process. Of course, we had super users, we had key users who were the kind of first point of contact.
And built into that new mobile client software as well, there are quick reference guides on processes as well and transactions, so you can see. So if you are new and you think, what was that again? And there's a button that you can press and it explains what that transaction is, what a code is, etc., etc.
Sure. We also got an awful lot of feedback. So, for example, when we implemented initially, it was the IBM consultants who actually configured things and set up the kind of readout. So, as you can see, it's not really off the big screen. And the way IBM had set it up, which was absolutely fine.
SAP standard, it's SAP standard.
SAP standard. People couldn't read what was on the screen, it was too small.
I think we always say that you need to learn Japanese, for SAP. You need to understand SAP transaction codes to be able to just use their software. Whereas the newer stuff, it hides all of that and just gives you simple English and buttons and things that you can read without having to understand, detailed Japanese.
Yeah. So, and listening to the feedback, that was one of the kind of key pieces. So that was what led us to going out and working with Rocket to actually put skin on it, which the operators loved. We also found that for some of the bombs, there could be, 50 different parts. They wouldn't scan them all, or they would miss some, or they would scan something twice. And, so we decided we wanted to put a feature in where if you scan something twice, it would be a beep, or a red dot, or if there was something missing, the same kind of thing. So quite a long process to get them comfortable using the scanners.
Another point as well, again, bang on about it all the time, testing an application. Really important. You know, we're big advocates of giving people equipment, getting them to test it, putting it into the business. You know, it's pointless us saying, well, we think that's the right device, and you go off and buy them, and then hang on a minute, it's not really worked for us. So we went and identified that at the time, this would have been the best device. It's got an extended range barcode scanner on. The guys were using them mainly on FLTs for moving stock around. So you don't have to tilt the device back like a traditional style device or a PDA. And it's got the extended ranging, so they can scan the pallets from the FLT without having to get off the actual truck itself. But you tested them, gave them to the guys, got feedback from them, made sure that you were buying the right equipment. And then obviously, ultimately, we got to a point where the software let everything down, but we brought it back in the end and came to a happy outcome.
We did, and clearly we tested this functionality along with all the other functionality in SAP. Because clearly one of the kind of deliverables was to have much more accurate stock status, to have one version of the truth. And we got there in the end, so it was a major tick in the box for Emtelle and for the project team.
So with a little bit of hindsight, or maybe not so much hindsight in the sense, but in broad terms then, when you look at implementing an ERP or a WMS, and obviously there is functional consultants, and you build the flow and you understand how the data goes, and you know how it just roughly works, or you want it to work, and then it's translated to a shop floor device to get everyone to do it. Would you say there's a case for saying that actually for some of those applications, it should be the mobility, the practicality of the mobility that informs maybe the process, so maybe it look the tube the other way as opposed to all one way?
I think it should, because basically a number of people at the top who are making the decisions do not understand how the processes work in detail. They just don't. So it makes a lot of sense to do it that way, for sure. The kind of new way of implementing ERP is, well, I'll stick with SAP, it's public cloud. So in public cloud, it's like, there's your solution in the box, there's your processes. If we stick to the solution, the processes coming out of the box, and you change internally, we can do it for this cost and in this timeline. However, you can go for private cloud, and you can configure the living hell out of the system. You can integrate it with whatever the hell you want to integrate it with, but it'll take you up to twice or three times as long to implement, and it will cost you 2 or 3 times as much. So clearly, I think the route that's being driven at the moment by all the kind of big suppliers is public cloud. I'll go slightly off.
Yeah.
See if that's okay. I'm working with a couple of councils at the moment, London and Warrington, who effectively currently use SAP, kind of not cloud, on premise. So they have decided they really need to upgrade, and they're going with public cloud. 18 months to implement, much cheaper in London.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to it as well. I mean, it's similar with guys at Loftware. We've got a lot of customers that used to run or do run Nice Label, now Loftware software on premise, and the majority of new implementations now are all cloud based. So you're always on the latest support version. You don't get left behind, which does happen. So yeah, I mean, whether it's ERP software or label management software, I think, you know, cloud will be the preferred option.
That's the direction at the moment, definitely.
Yeah.
Just going back to, we talked about the application, shop floor practicality is informing maybe the actual design decision to a degree. Do you think there's any headspace or consideration at design or at implementation stage of looking at what kind of technology is available that could fundamentally alter maybe how you think you can do it? So the RFID kit or the robots or whatever it may be. Does that ever, because I've not been in those initial design meetings at all, but does that ever come in, or is it a case of it just cascades and find whatever?
I think it's a case of you need to look at a number of elements of risk when you're looking to implement anything new. So using the example of Emtelle, sites that didn't even use an ERP application or anything else, there's a limit to how much you can kind of take on. So I think it depends an awful lot on how the client, how the site currently uses technology. So if they're really kind of low base, typically they wouldn't really look in detail. However, if it's a company who really have a good solution in place, they're used to using technology, then yes, they will look at the detail. I mean, the new versions of ERP are using well-quoted AI, machine learning, and all that constantly. So, people are becoming much more au fait with technology. However, you need to drive the benefits, the business case for why it makes sense to implement RFID. What's it going to save me? What are the strategic benefits and what are the economic benefits? That's absolutely a kind of key and vital. I think one of the other things is that in any ERP implementation, there's so many of them, there's just so many horror stories. There are. And it's typically because, it's a variety of reasons. You need the right people with the right knowledge. You need support from the top of the organisation. You need quick decisions. You need good data. You need good consultants on the implementer side. You need the right people on the client side. You need them, in my opinion, full time. You need them trained up properly, etc., etc., etc. I'm sure you're all well aware of what needs to be done. But going back to your point, it depends on the level of technology that's in the company, I think, and they're just not aware.
Yeah. One thing we haven't mentioned as well is the fact that we provide a managed service to Emtelle, like we do some other customers that are here as well, but some won't be aware. So we use an MDM solution to be able to remotely manage the devices. So when we actually switched out the old mobile client for the new mobile client, that was done from our offices down the road here to sites in Germany and Denmark over the air in a matter of minutes. So we do have that capability as well in terms of managing estates and being able to push those updates out quickly to get people up and running and sort out any issues that they may have. Has anybody got any questions? We can get Chris back up on stage a bit later on the panel if he doesn't mind. But has anybody got any questions around it other than Nigel? Yeah.
You mentioned that Emtelle provides ducting and fiber for BT, Virgin and Deutsche Telekom, as an example. It sounds like you have quite a lot of work in just to get Emtelle to the basics instead of documenting the current operating process, as you said, it was a bit for detail and when you first approach. And now that that's implemented, do you think that some of those customers at Emtelle will ask for more visibility into stock management as part of their supply chain? So they're not asking, the version 1 supply chain assurance so they can get stock when they need it. Now there's visibility in Emtelle's stock production methods process. Do you see most customers asking for visibility? Do you think they're going to be next step?
They currently do ask for visibility, and the kind of biggest thing for them is when you give me a date that you're going to deliver it to the address I want it at, I want it to arrive on time. So there's it's a really good point actually that I'd missed completely. We also implemented kind of SAP reporting as a part of what we're doing, which is called SAC, SAP Cloud reporting. So a lot of the reports actually go out to the BTs and the Virgins of the world. And one of the kind of big things about delivering to them is that the product is put into pavements and roads all over the place. And by the way, they do a certain address, and a week later there's another address and another address. So actually being able to get the right product to the right street in the right part of the street's essential. Some of the big customers also use ERP solutions. They are talking about linking up the ERP applications so that they can automatically put their orders into Emtelle, and they can see the salient pieces of data regarding delivery, etc. So there's a lot going on there.
So it sounds like there's some direct business benefits to Emtelle, which not a bit of visibility of that process and stuff, but then business benefits for customers.
Yeah.
In the reverse, you'd be able to do a bit of forensic analysis on, if there's an issue with duct in the, or a fiber cable in the road somewhere, you have that traceability back through to maybe even the pallet that was over in the warehouse in Emtelle, whereas previously.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100% right. I think also stock-wise, Emtelle, their stock status wasn't too good. It was mentioned earlier as well. Same kind of situation. So the ROI time on the whole implementation is 2 years.
Quick.
Quite quick. Yeah.
One of the ones we're on at the moment, still going. They've 3 years, I think now, and still not even got into UAT. So. Yeah.
Well, I actually thought, implementing in 3 years was quite a while. But one of the visits I made, the folks said that it'd take them 8 years to implement, which I thought was quite a while.
Yeah. Great. Right. Thanks very much, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers. Right.